Hello, my friends. Thanks for coming back and sitting down for another little chat. I got an interesting one for you today. I grew up I grew up in a Christian home. You probably knew that, but I thought that Christian music was kind of the best, and then an honest look at that discovered that it's not. In fact, it's kind of lame sometimes. And so, in high school, middle school, I remember having arguments with people about, no, this is just as good. Looking back, I was wrong. So, all you folks that I argued with about that, yeah, you were right in most cases. So anyway, I wanted to have a conversation about that. Why is it that music that carries the Christian label is oftentimes so lame? And I sat down with a friend of mine who's been in the music industry in a couple different capacities. Right now he's a music producer, as you'll hear when we chat, and we had a conversation about it. So, you ready? Let's roll. Thanks for sitting down today, man. I'm looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me, JD.
Yeah, for sure. So you've played several different roles in the music industry. What all have you done?
Gosh, so in the industry, so I started leading worship in high school, learned guitar with Beatles songs and worship songs, and started leading worship in high school, and then kind of formed a band, and that band, few years later, went on to get signed to Tooth and Nail Records up in Seattle. I met the little brother of the head honcho there, Brandon Ebel, and he wanted to sign us. So our name was Cadet, and we signed to Tooth and Nail and did a few albums. We were a Christian rock band and toured around for a few years and played with all like my childhood heroes like the Newsboys and Audio Adrenaline and
Ooh.
Supertones, and we were opening for all these people that I'd grown up listening to, and so yeah, I did the Christian rock thing for a while, and then after a few years, kind of got weary of traveling all the time. We were just in a van driving every day, and
Yeah.
saw a lot of the country and loved it, but I also got tired of the driving. And then I got offered a job as a worship pastor at a church called Calvary Chapel in Corvallis. So I did that for many years. Was a worship leader there, and
Yep.
wore a lot of different hats as they do at churches, and was a college pastor and all that. And then 2 years ago, decided to move out to Nashville. So I'm out here now. I'm a music producer, recording artists and writing songs with people. There's a lot of co-writing that happens here. So yeah, now I'm experiencing that side of the music industry in Nashville.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, we met at Calvary, so that was a good time.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I remember Cadet lightly. So I was probably a fan. Back
Nice.
in what was that? That was like the 90s, right? So
It was
then
like late '90s, early 2000s.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
then you were at Calvary for gosh, what, good 15 years?
It was like 20 years, which is
Was
crazy.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
so let's get to this main question, and I pointed out in the intro that this may be offensive to some, but that's why we need to talk about it. Um, we had a short Facebook interaction where you said because it's not honest. Why is Christian music lame? What do you mean by it's not honest?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, like, obviously with music, there's the actual musical part of it. Like, is it interesting with the melodies and the chord progressions and the arrangement? I think there's that side of it where Christian music can kind of play it a little bit safe for the most part. It's pretty predictable with the
Mhm.
musicality of it. But I think it's more so in the lyrics where I just feel like it doesn't really push the envelope. It plays it very safe. There's many things. It's kind of like church culture where I grew up in church, and it's like you're pretty aware of what you can and can't say, in church, that idea, which I don't subscribe to now. I don't like that, secular sacred divide thing. It's like, hey, talk however you talk outside of church, talk that way inside of church. Let's
Be real.
be honest. If you're struggling with your faith, like that's not rewarded in church. You're rewarded in church if you're like full of faith, you're on fire, and all about Jesus all the time. And but like if you're struggling with your faith, it's like be honest about that. So I kind of think it's more of like kind of that church culture thing of like there's just lots of things that people don't talk about in church. Like I got drunk last night. That just on that real level, like I got drunk last night, or I looked at porn the other day, like just like this,
Yeah.
or just like I've been suicidal lately, that kind of stuff, where it's just real stuff. I feel like Christian music plays it safe in that, first of all, there's this idea. So like I was at I'll just give you like a real down to earth example. I write in all sorts of genres. Christian music's one of them that I was writing in for a little bit while I was here. So I went to this writing night where they have a bunch of pro writers out. We have dinner together, and they have an artist that we're writing for. And so there was a Christian artist there, and the record label CEO was there to talk about what kind of song they were looking for. And he literally said, he's like, just so you know, we're writing for K-Love, one of the biggest Christian radio stations, and we know their audience is soccer moms, and it has to be positive and encouraging. I was like, what? So like that's what I mean by it doesn't feel honest, because life isn't always positive and encouraging. It's like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it just sucks, and it's
Yeah.
there's not like always a resolution to it, where there's this nice pretty bow that we put on top. Sometimes it just sucks, and it's like I just feel like more free in other genres. Like I write in country now. I used to not like country music because country music, kind of in a similar way, it would be only about like trucks and farming and dirt roads and all this stuff. Like I can't relate to that. I'm not a farmer, I'm not a cowboy. But even country music, like one of the most traditional genres, has even evolved past that. And now it's like you can just talk about real life now in country music, and you have all sorts of songs where it's not about the dirt roads and the beer drinking songs. It's or fishing. It's like now it's just like I love some of the stuff like Jelly Roll's putting out. He was formerly hip hop, now he's in country,
Yeah.
and he's just like writing honest music about his struggles with addiction and all sorts of stuff, struggles with faith, and I just appreciate that. So I feel like more comfortable in that genre, because then I could just talk about real life, and if God comes up in the song, awesome. But it's not, and it's a little bit more. Sorry, I'm just kind of going off.
No, you're good. This is
I
good
don't know if I'm
input.
supposed to, but I appreciate. I think where Christian music plays it safe, also when it talks about the struggles of life, is it gets very general and metaphorical. You have the stereotypical or the cliches, like when Christian music talks about struggles, it talks about it in terms of being a storm, waves, fire. The valley, and it's like just talk about the real stuff of life, because I can't. Those are impersonal, general things. I can't relate to fire or storms. Like
Mm.
that doesn't do anything for me. But like I appreciate songs where it just gets down into the gritty struggles of life. Like Corey Asbury came out with a song that actually was written at first by some guys named Michael Farron, Steve Fee. The song's called "Kind," and that's a great, honest song. It just like the first verse comes out of the gate. The first verse is like, sometimes marriages don't work out, sometimes babies die, and it just like like that's gritty stuff. It's not talking about storms or fire. That's like real stuff, like
Yeah.
miscarriages, divorce, and the song just progresses, and then like is a conversation with God, but it's like it's honest, and
Yeah.
I appreciate songs like that that get into more of the honest, gritty struggles of life. It just I connect with that. It's more vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's just like anyway. So yeah, that's what I
No,
mean. That's
that
a
that
long-winded
word
answer to that question.
for sure. No, that word that you just said, vulnerability, there seems to be a lack of that. And I wouldn't say that it's a total lack. Like you just pointed out, Corey Asbury came out with one. And we were talking before we went on air that Need to Breathe has some really good honest portrayals of I don't understand this, or whatever the case is that they're really honestly going through. They can just say that. And as Christ followers, are we have this relationship with Almighty that, man, he wants that transparency, that honesty. And people find value, I think, in and research shows, so it's got to be true,
Yeah,
that
I
when
mean,
we can
Brene
be
Brown says it, so it's got to be true.
right, right. And that's the researcher that I'm talking about. Um, She's a smart researcher.
Oh yeah,
Let's be
totally,
truthful about that.
totally.
But if we can be more transparent and more honest and more vulnerable, man, we're gonna have impact, maybe towards the deeper parts of what someone else is going through. And music's such a powerful way to do that. I don't understand, and maybe you've got some insights, especially since you've been doing some work in Nashville, on why is it that we aren't that transparent. Maybe your experience with K-Love guy could lend some input on that. Why is Christian music not typically as vulnerable as maybe it really should be?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So we were talking earlier. Like I worked at a church for 20 years, and I think my take on it, and I know like when you're a pastor, you're kind of like there's a lot of pressure to not offend people or whatever, but also I just grew up in church, and it seems like it spills over from the church culture where people
Mm.
this idea of putting on your Sunday best when you quote unquote go to church, even though church is not supposed to be a physical location, it's supposed to be people. We are the church sort of thing. But there's this idea, this secular sacred divide that's what I would call it, where it's like people, and I actually, now that I live in the Bible Belt in the South, I see it here too. It's like people will party it up at the bar on Saturday night, and then they will go to church on Sunday and be a totally different person. All of a sudden, they're Mr. Holy, and it's like, dude, come on, you were partying at the bar last night, which is fine, but just like don't act differently in church than you would outside church. And I feel like there's a lot of that in Christian music where I'll write with people, and I have a lot of respect. I have friends who are in the Christian space and really good people with good hearts, but even they feel like, oh, I can't say these things that are, that I'm struggling with, or I want to say this in this song, but I can't because it won't be accepted by, Christian radio. I'm like, these are like golden people, like godly people. Like if they even feel like that they can't be honest, I'm like, how can Joe Smo relate to it who's like he's in and out of AA? It's
Yeah.
like those are real things. Like why can't we talk about the real things? And I think again it spills over from the church culture where that was I think why I kind of got a little burnt out is even I felt like I couldn't be myself as a church leader, but like I still struggle with that even as I attend church, and I hate saying that phrase, attend church, because we are the church, but I still feel like each church has their own kind of vibe and culture, and it's like you kind of in order to fit in here, you got to kind of like talk like this or dress like this. Oh, this is hip. This is hip cool church. You better dress hip and cool. It's like okay, like all right, I gotta go shopping before I go to church, whatever.
I'm going to
I just want to be
Goodwill.
myself. Like, I wear Birkenstocks. Let me wear my Birkenstocks.
Jesus
Eh,
wore Jesus stocks. I'm
yeah.
sure.
Or like I think one of my favorite passages in scripture where it represents honesty to me as a response to Jesus is that passage where a guy says, I believe, but help my unbelief.
Mhm.
I feel like I live in that tension. Like, I'm not always full of faith. Sometimes I wonder, do I even believe in God? Like, it depends on the day,
Mhm.
depends on what mood I'm in, what I'm going through. But like, I relate to that passage so much. Like, I believe, but help my unbelief because I have a lot of doubt and a lot of skepticism
Sure.
and I just wish there was more of that kind of like space in church to respond to Jesus in that way. Like even in the worship songs we sing, it's like there's all this hyperbole. Like it's almost like I feel like I can't connect with a lot of worship songs because I would rather sing the song of like, "Hey Jesus, I believe, but help my unbelief." Like I
Mhm.
could I could get on board with a worship song like that. I can't get on board with a song where it's just like, "I don't have any doubts today," and God, you're so good. I forget about all my problems. And it's like, no, I don't like. That's not even true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyways,
If you feel
I'm
like you're lying when you do it. Um,
yeah.
so you go back a little bit to what you were saying about some of these artists that are saying things like it wouldn't go well on the radio. So do you think that it has something to do, and I don't want to push too hard necessarily on the money piece, although that's a giant thing. I
Yeah.
mean, Christian labels gross in the billions. But there seems to be like what you were saying that it's there's kind of a career preservation mentality. Am I smelling that?
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. I just think it's so odd. But I mean, yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a business. Even though there's good people involved. Christian music is still a
Oh
business.
yeah.
There's money on the table, and first of all, you have the artist that has to get on board with the song. There's a lot of kind of gatekeepers.
Hmm.
So you have the artist who needs to get on board with the song. They're going to be the ones singing the song. Unfortunately, we talk about cancel culture a lot. There's cancel culture in Christian music. It's like there have been so many artists that got canceled for saying certain things. It's like, it's so funny when I hear Christians complain about cancel culture. I'm like, Christians like invented cancel culture.
Wow.
um, yeah, I mean, I remember like even back in the day when Michael W. Smith had a song on secular radio, the roaming through the night to find my place in this world, and everyone was up in arms in the church, like he's going secular and
Mhm.
singing secular music, and what is he doing? And it's like now it's like I look back, I go, that was the best thing he could have done. Like why are we just singing to Christians? Why are we preaching to the choir? Like we need these voices out on the secular airwaves. Anyways, so yeah, there is the money piece, JD, for sure, and then there's also the towing the line of like what is theologically safe, which is so hard because like 10 different pastors will have 10 different interpretations of a passage. It's like there's not room for that in Christian music. It's like you got to be very safe. You got to sing songs like God is good, he loves you,
Stuff
and
that
it's
you
like
know
I
is
don't know.
absolutely true and just go with that and nothing else.
Yeah, because that's safe. Like God is good, and He loves you. You won't get in trouble for saying that. But
Right.
but like I just put out a song online called "Rebel Preacher," and I
Hmm.
knew as I was writing it, it was going to be controversial. And I got a lot of people who liked it, and a lot of people who didn't. But I was I had some expletives in there purposefully,
Hmm.
um, not just to be like edgy, but I was like, actually, so I was describing kind of the vulgar scene that Jesus was born into. Like
Right.
And I used the word shit and straw. I actually got that from a Bono interview. He was talking about how like it was just so mind blowing that the God of the universe was born into shit and straw. I was like, ooh, I like that. So
Yeah.
Bono can take the credit for that. I hope he doesn't sue me. I don't have as much money as he does, but but I liked the vulgarness of that because it represents the vulgarness of that scene where it wasn't like the pretty Hallmark nativity scene that we see at Christmas. Like
Mhm.
I've been to Israel like 5 times. Most scholars believe it was actually in a cave where
Yeah.
they kept animals, and there would have been animal crap all over the place.
Right.
And it's like, dude, the God of the universe was born into that circumstance, basically homeless, like,
Yeah.
and just this really crappy scene. And so it's like I got to put that in the song. And so like, anyways, I think I was thinking about your question, why is Christian music lame? And like, I just kind of wish, like, as just kind of how Jesus taught parables, where they were actually very provocative, thought provoking, controversial on purpose. I mean, you have the story of the Good Samaritan. Like in
Mhm.
Christian conservative circles, that would be like the good liberal. Oh my gosh, he's telling a story about the good liberal. It's like he was so good at like
Yeah.
first of all grabbing people's attention with that sort of like story, but like it would invite people into the story. It's like, where do I relate to this
Right.
character into the story? And then it's controversial, and so we're still talking about it. And
Yeah.
it's like I kind of wish Christian music would do that lyrically, like that it would be thought provoking, first of all. Like, oh, I haven't heard it put that way before. Right now, it's not. It's predictable and safe. It needs to have, a pretty simple resolution to the conflict in the song. I wish it was more controversial.
Mhm.
And just like, why not? If Jesus taught that way, why can't Christian music be more like the parables that he taught, where they were offensive, like the very opposite of not trying to offend people. What if we actually tried to offend people in Christian songs by representing truth, not just trying to piss them off, but
Yeah.
actually like unpacking truth as it really is in an honest way and not being afraid to offend people. Like
Right.
why are we so scared to offend people? That might actually be what they need to actually discover truth, to actually be offended.
For
It's a
sure.
deep thought, but
No, that's super rich. I like it. I often think about what if we were more offensive, but in the right way. I mean, I don't necessarily have an A, B, and C are the things that would be offensive in the right way. Like, because I mean, you talked about cancel culture. It's prevalent. And
yeah,
yes, I hadn't even thought about it, but we probably started canceling ourselves, a couple decades ago in Christian music. But in
yeah.
terms of cancel culture as it exists in the modern era, like the media and all that stuff, it's real. So people don't want to be offensive in the wrong way, but they do want to provoke an idea. I think of Tom McDonald and how he just puts it out there, and this is how I'm seeing it, you guys, and this is pretty raw. And I really like
Hmm.
him. Some of my Christian friends don't like him because he's offensive, bringing up your
Okay,
point, but
okay.
he really makes you think. And he's not a Christian to my knowledge. I don't know the guy, so I've never had a conversation with him. But he does put out some things that say this does not add up, and here's why. So
Mm.
I really appreciate his transparency and how he goes about it. And he's got a great lick to his music, and it's more like, what is it? Rap hip hop, I guess. I don't know.
Well,
There's so many blends of music anymore
yeah,
that I think is pretty sick, honestly.
yeah.
Um, so you mentioned a little bit ago about the preachers have like there can be 10 preachers who interpret a passage in different ways. So that was one of the things I thought about talking about was just because it's Christian doesn't mean that it's actually good. So when you listen to a Christian song, and worship and Christian can seem synonymous, but I don't personally believe that they are. Worship is lyrically to give praise to God, to our creator, to Almighty, and all the words that go with defining who God is. That's to worship. But Christian music really has more of a bent around like being transparent and honest. It doesn't have that in general, but it has more of a potential too. So this group that might say, well, at least I'm not filling my brain with a bunch of junk. Are you? I mean, you don't know that you're filling it up. I heard this recently, and I'm going to repeat it. I don't know who said it, but they didn't have a copyright. So they said Satan was a worship leader. So don't you think that Satan can enter the music industry and even the Christian music industry and kind of turn it on its head? What do you say to people that believe that if they listen to it on K-Love, it's definitely going to have good doctrine to it?
Oh wow, gosh, yeah, that's yeah. It's like I feel like it's like that thing where like a half truth is not the truth. I mean, lots of lies are shrouded in half truths, and I guess what I would say is like I feel like Christian music is representing half of the gospel or
Mm.
half of the actual truth of what the Bible is talking about. It's like the Bible's talking about like self-sacrifice and like laying down your life for others.
Mm-hmm.
And instead it seems like a lot of Christian songs are catering to self. It's like stroking this narcissism within us where like it's all about me kind of thing. And it's like, no, it's not all about you. It's like, it's all about you laying down your life for others. And I don't hear a lot of songs like that. It's like, it's more about how much God loves me and how much he's helping me through my struggle. And it's like, okay, that's true, but that's half the truth of what the whole scripture is talking about. I mean, we're following a Jesus who laid down his life on the cross. And it's like, where are those songs that are challenging people to pick up their cross and follow after him? Well, that's not very positive and encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
That's not very K-Love oriented.
Right.
The
Right.
crucifixion was bloody and brutal. I remember when that movie came out, Passion of the Christ.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Christians were offended by that movie because, first of all, it was rated R and it was so bloody and gory. And it's like, dude, it was about the crucifixion. Like, the cross was rated R. It was bloody and gory. And so
Yeah.
it's like, that's what I mean by like, I feel like Christian music represents like this half truth because
Mm.
it tries to polish up and glamorize, you know, the gospel, which is like at the center of the gospel is a bloody cross with a crucified savior. That's a rated R thing. It's
Yeah.
like it's not positive and encouraging. The resurrection's positive and encouraging. That's cool. But you don't have the resurrection without the bloody,
Mm-hmm.
brutal crucifixion. It's
Yeah.
like we want to skip to the resurrection part. Like
Yeah.
I'm offended by the bloody, gory cross. I want to skip to the resurrection. No, you can't. Like that's
It's
half
part
the
of it.
gospel. Like you can't have the resurrection without the crucifixion. Anyways,
Yeah.
I guess I'm getting a little heady there, but that's what I kind of see is like a lack of the other side of the gospel. So I guess does that kind of touch on your
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a a great comment. The last thing I want to bring up to you and get your input on this thought process that I've had as a non-musician. I'm one of those guys that I bought a guitar when I was interning in a church because they didn't have music for the youth group. So I'm like, okay, I'll go get a guitar. And I self-taught all four chords and just the typical maybe I could play K-Love. I don't know. But I'm thinking about gifting and how people are different people are super gifted in various areas. And like the First Corinthians chapter 12 whole list of spiritual gifts, it's not exhaustive. It kind of leaves you like with the dot 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 after the last one that it lists. And so music may fall into that, in at least in how I'm considering it. So that being said, if musicality is a gift, then it needs to be shared. What we've got on the market in general, of course, is this kind of B minus quality music. Why aren't we, as people that are, I'm going to use a church term. So my atheist friends that are listening, I kind of apologize for this, but we're redeemed. We're made new, right? And therefore the God of the universe dwells inside of us. Pretty sweet thing. That's a big concept. But if that's what's going on, and it is, then why are we producing B minus as opposed to A plus? And what I think of is like Dave Matthews displays more talent than Jeremy Camp. Displays. I don't know how talented Jeremy Camp really is. I don't know, because what I hear on K-Love and Air One when I listen to it, which is rare, because I get annoyed and go to Bluetooth. That is a truth. Lauren Daigle kind of copied Adele. Why
Mm.
are we not as inventive as the spirit of God that lives in us can produce in us? Why
Oh
why
yeah.
does it go back to the safety thing, or is there another thing to consider there?
Yeah, I think well, like as far as the skill level, I mean, I'm in Nashville, so like the bar is high, like
Yeah.
everyone's skilled. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't measure up. But like, but one thing, what you reminded me of is like this, the skill of creativity. It's a skill too. It's like I think of it
Mm.
like a muscle that like I have to like keep fueling that and almost like working out creatively. But like one that is one thing I've noticed in like Christian music is it's always like or very regularly 10 years behind where secular music is at.
Yeah.
And so you'll have someone like Coldplay come out, which I loved Coldplay. 10 years later, all the Christian music sound like Coldplay. It's like, dude, you guys are a decade behind.
Yeah.
Why can't Christian music be on the forefront creatively?
Exactly.
Why does it follow? And I don't, it's again, it's a safe, I feel like it's a safety thing. Well, now we know that the Coldplay sound works and everyone loves it. So now Christian music will get on board with it because, it will sell songs. Maybe that's part of it, money driven. But
Mhm.
like, yeah, just the safety thing creatively, it is kind of weird that
Mhm.
we can't, push the envelope like just as much as, quote unquote secular music. I hate to use that term, but
Mhm.
but like because music in the secular quote unquote world is constantly evolving. Like even I mentioned country music earlier.
Mhm.
Country music has always been one of the most traditional genres, especially in Nashville. Like, I watched a documentary about how when Shania Twain first came here, uh, country music wouldn't accept her because she was from Canada and she was like trying to bring pop and rock into country music. And it's like, well, then she became like she broke out and like became wildly successful, and then she became the new standard for like what you
Mhm.
could do in country music. But now these days, like country music has expanded its horizons to, include all sorts of, hybrids of genres. And you have like people like Jelly Roll, who came out of hip hop, and now
Mhm.
he's like huge in the country music scene. And
Mhm.
it's like even one of the most traditional genres has evolved. And it's like
Yeah.
Christian music keeps staying like 10 years behind
Mhm.
where all the other music is at. And that, yeah, I just feel like, we serve a creative God.
Mhm.
He's the OG creator. And like, I think in one way, we resemble the image of God is in our creativity.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit is a creative spirit. And it's like, I'm hopeful that it'll get to this point because I do hear a lot of people talking about this. There's this longing for, Christian music to be more creative, to be more honest. And so I think when there's enough people that are longing for that, I think we will see more people putting out music like that. It might not be on K-Love or Christian radio, but let's admit that a lot of people, most people aren't listening to the radio anyways. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I get to turn on my Spotify playlist. I don't need a radio DJ to curate my songs. It's like,
Hmm.
that's the world we live in. It's like, choose your own adventure. It's like, that's why I'm not too keen on trying to like aim for Christian radio. It's kind of like a dying breed. It's like, so I do hear more talk about that, and you know, most young people aren't listening to Christian radio, so it's like I'm
Hmm.
kind of thinking about the next generation audience, and I think they are longing for real, honest, down to earth, creative,
Hmm.
spiritual music, because a lot of them have faith. It's not a lack of faith. It's not a lack of spirituality. It's just that they are not inspired and they don't connect with
Hmm.
the lack of vulnerability in Christian music and the lack
Yeah.
of creativity. And so
Yeah.
I think we will see more people putting out songs that maybe don't fit perfectly. And another thing of mine is I'd see genres kind of like dying. The whole idea of genre,
Okay.
like fitting, you know, in pop music or country music or rock music. Most of the artists I work with, they're just like, I don't even know what my genre is. I just write songs that I like. And then you ask people, what genre of music do you listen to? Most people I talk to is just like, I don't pick a genre. I just
Music
listen
that I
to good
like.
music. Like, do I like the song or not? So I think the whole idea of genres is like that whole idea is dying.
Mm.
Like there's not a pressure except in Christian music. It's the last bastion where I see like people trying to conform to a genre and does this fit in this genre?
Yeah.
All other genres are like they're doing hybrids,
Hmm.
infusions of different music, and it's not like lyrically you're not held to, you know, a certain standard of what you can and can't say. I mean, maybe there's certain things you can't say, but it's pretty wide open. And so,
Hmm.
but I did want to before we end. Did you have any more questions, JD?
Well, I wanted to pose like, can we come up with two solutions, possible solutions?
Oh yeah, okay. This might fit it. I wanted to touch on this because I thought of it when I was thinking of your question. I think one solution to Christian music is to write music that mirrors the Psalms more.
Yeah.
I actually think the Psalms are very, very honest.
Yeah.
There's lots of questioning in the Psalms. I
Hmm.
mean, God, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Yeah.
That that wouldn't be on K-Love radio, but it's in the Psalms. It's in the
Right.
Bible. Like a
Yeah.
lot of like theologians might jump in and say, God has not forsaken you. He's always with you. Well, you know, it's in the Psalms. There's space for questioning. Jesus reiterates it on the cross. God, my God, why have you forsaken me? There's lots of, I was thinking of Psalm 88. Psalm 88 is one of my favorite Psalms
Okay.
because there's not like this resolution to it. It like the
Mm.
whole time this psalmist is talking about how like he's slain, he's like someone who's slain in the grave, and you know, God, you've put me in the lowest pit. And here's how it ends. This psalmist says, you have taken from me friend and neighbor, darkness is my closest friend. And it just ends. It's like, whoa, I'm gonna use that lyric in a song. Darkness is my closest friend. Because I feel like there's this pressure in Christian music to resolve everything and make sure, like, okay, if you talk about darkness, you better bring everything into the light. But it's like sometimes, oftentimes, life is not like that. There's not a quick
Hmm.
resolve.
Right.
Everything doesn't have a happy ending. It's not a
Yeah.
Hallmark movie. And what I love about that psalm is it starts out in a minor key and it ends in a minor key.
Yeah.
And there's not like this pretty bow tied on top. And he
Right.
doesn't turn it around to go, but God, you're good, and but I know you love me. No, he just ends with darkness is my closest friend.
Yeah.
And like some days we live in that place. Like, you know, some days I'm depressed and I don't want someone saying, yeah, life is hard, Ryan, but just know that God is good.
Hmm.
No, I don't want that quick result. That's not helpful to me. Like
Right.
I relate to this raw, vulnerable psalm
Hmm.
where he's just saying, "Darkness is my closest friend." I go, "Yeah, been there,
I
been
know
there."
what
I
you're
relate to
talking
that.
about.
So that
Yeah.
would be one. As you're asking about solutions, I would just say let's get back to how the Psalms
Yeah.
interact with God and how the Psalms tell about just the raw parts of the human experience. And
Hmm.
a lot of times it's in a minor key and there's
Yeah.
not a quick resolution. So let's get back to how the psalmist wrote it.
Hmm.
Let's use that template. That's one thought.
I like that. That Stella bought a tenor guitar, a 1952 Gibson tenor guitar in Nashville, and so she's been trying to write stuff, and she's been doing things from the Psalms. She'll
Oh,
pull something from the
cool.
Psalm, kind of note it and whatnot, and she's got more knowledge on music than I do. For those listening that don't know who Stella is, I keep referring to her. That's my daughter. So she has been doing that very thing, and she's not recording anything. She's just writing to write. And I
Mm,
wonder if maybe that, in my mind, is that maybe more of a solution? We don't write for the industry, and by we, I mean those that are talented, um, to write because it's
yes.
there in the soul. And maybe it's Psalm 88 where there is no resolution. Maybe there are things that we pull from our learning from the scriptures where there is a resolution, or there
Yeah.
seemed to be one, or
Yeah.
just the it sucks, but
Yeah.
and then but then again, or Job. I mean,
Yeah.
dang,
Yeah.
bro had it rough, you know,
Yeah.
and
Seriously.
there's some real honesty there. So I wonder this, and granted, I'm not in the music industry at all, but if there was more captured in the industry for people that are just putting out their soul, if the
Yeah.
lyrics and the musicality of it can sync up with getting outside of that box of safety,
Yeah.
man, I wonder how many souls that would touch.
Yeah.
In Christianity, those that are Christians, but like you said before, man, why does our music need to cater to ourselves? Why are we just preaching to the choir?
Yeah.
It
I kind of think about it like, you know how like in church someone will get up and give a testimony and they'll
yeah.
just tell about their story, just the good, bad, and the ugly. This is
Hmm.
my story. And like as you were talking about Stella just writing songs, like not trying to write for radio, not trying to write for money, like in a way we should just be telling our testimony.
For
Like
sure.
I a while ago, one of the hardest parts of my life was my brother committed suicide.
Yeah.
That's a part of my testimony, and
Hmm.
I don't have anything rosy to say about suicide. Suicide just sucks. It
Yeah.
just sucks.
Yeah.
Like there's like no resolution. All I can say is what did I learn from that? Suicide sucks. But
Hmm.
like I can also hopefully encourage others who have either lost people to suicide or people who are struggling with suicide. Hey, I made it through it. I made it through it. So can you.
Hmm.
Oh man, you lost someone to suicide. Oh, I know how that feels. That is devastating. You
Yeah.
can, I can sit with them in that place, which is
Hmm.
comforting to people.
Yeah.
But also part of my testimony is there is light at the other side of the tunnel. The grief never goes away. I'll just be honest. The
Sure. Yeah.
grief never goes away. There's
Hmm.
stages, there's waves, but like there is light at the end of the tunnel. You can become stronger from this. I'm not, blowing smoke. You
Hmm.
can because I've lived that, and so I just feel like if
Hmm.
our songs were more testimonial, it
Hmm.
makes me think of that scripture in Revelation where it says they overcame by the blood of the Lamb
Hmm.
and the word of their testimony. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty powerful. Like you think about the blood of the Lamb, that's very
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
And they overcame by the word of their testimony. I really believe it would be so much more powerful if our songs were just more testimonial of our real life. Like, we're not
Mm.
trying to write something that people will sing in church or for Christian radio. This just comes straight out of the pages of my life. Here
Yeah.
it is. And
Yeah.
I do think that would be healing for people, and I think it'd
Yeah.
be powerful.
Sweet.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
Beautiful. You said you had something else you wanted to throw in there.
Oh, that was it.
That was it. Nice.
That and the Psalm 88. I just love. I love. I just
Really
wish
good.
more Christian music was more like the Psalms, and it's
Hmm.
biblical, and you have Psalms like Psalm 88, and you know, yeah. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I'm glad you could make the time for this. Man, I really I've enjoyed chatting with you. And it's good to see your face again. I haven't seen you
Yeah,
for many moons.
yeah. I got a few
So,
more grays in my beard.
yeah, those are coming along for me too. So, I'm not sure what to do with that. My kids sure enjoy laughing at them, but
Wear it with
uh
pride.
good
Uh,
times.
yeah, dude. Good seeing you.
Well, having a chance to sit down with a person that is actually in the music industry did give me some insights. And I know, everybody's got their own maybe perspectives or opinions is probably a better term for it. But you guys, this point that I was really kind of starting to think about and question and is the musicality part. Why is it so lame? And I do have to say it. In a lot of ways, it's come a long ways, but in some circles, it just hasn't. And that kind of hurts. I think I made the point there when I was talking with Ryan that uh, we should be more creative. We really should have that. And yet, his point about keeping it safe bleeds into the musicality. And again, I'm not a musician, but I take in a lot of music, and I think it's valuable. I know some of the people are typing that email saying, "You little snot rocket! I can't believe you're harping on blah blah blah." Okay, hold back. Don't hit send until you hear this part. We really should be more creative, but there's creativity coming. There's new things on the market, and as the industry, the music industry as a whole changes, and there's Spotify and independent recording, there's some people that are willing to push the envelope. But I think one of the main struggles I have is that point that I made that, gosh, you're making it so that you can sell a record. And you got to put food on the table. So to some extent I get that. I mean, I have my job and I work there so that I can keep the lights on. And gosh, I mean, Ryan talked about the very real thing that we should be more honest. Not everything has an immediate resolution in 3.5 minutes. Suddenly, you've got all your problems solved, and yet there's this other side of it that there is a solution. So there's this truth thing, and he referenced the psalmist. I think it's David that writes at Psalm 88 where there really isn't one, but there's a lot of other psalms that do have a resolution in a poem written to be a song, right? So it's not there's no simple solutions on this. But if I was to push a little bit of a challenge out there to those that are in the Christian music industry, and even those that are just writing for stuff for their own benefit and other benefit, be honest. Um, it would probably be scary for some of you to read through my journal and or many of them, my journal entries that just are me being honest. And this honesty that comes out, we build a deeper relationship with the Almighty when we're able to be fully transparent and go, you paid for this, and man, I'm still sucking at it. So then there's healing from that. So it's not just a quick little let's be quippy and give a slap a Bible verse on it like I've talked about so many times, whether in person or here in the recorded version of me. Uh, let's be transparent. Let's open the door for that. And it's risky and it's scary. Believe me, I know. Um, but there's value to it in your own spiritual journey as well as that of your friends and family that need you to be transparent too. So whether we're talking about music or we're talking about other things galore, open up with transparency. I think that's maybe a good start in finding something to resolve this challenge that we have with kind of being on the second tier of music. And that might be even a best case scenario, because the cheese factor is real. Let's be transparent. Let's be real with that. You're going to find few and far between those that can show a real talent and creativeness in music, and yet inside us dwells the one who has gifted us with creativity. That seems like it's a bit of an oxymoron. So get some creativity going, dig deep, and it's harder for some than others. I know that, but it's worth the journey. I think that's all for this one, but I do want to say that if you've got an opposing view on this or any other issue, let's sit down for our own civil discourse on it and just say, well, I don't see it that way, and tell me. Because whether you want to be recorded or not, I think it could be valuable to, again, sitting by the fire pit, having a conversation. That's what we want to do here. This is not to slam anybody. This is not to tear down the church. I love the church, but it does have its flaws. And so we want to talk about how we can remedy some of that as Christ followers. All right. I will talk to you on the next one. Have a good one, people. Don't forget, I love you.